Hey everyone, welcome to Dominating Digital. I'm so excited about the fact that you are here because you are here for the first workshop in the overall Dominating Digital workshop series, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and put myself over here, right? You can see everything on the screen. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right in. And I pray that you definitely learned something from this webinar and you actually have fun and feel a lot more confident and clear about your way forward for your business and your brand, right? So, as you know, this first edition is going to be focusing on building your personal brand so that you can increase your visibility and sales online, right? So here's how I'm just moving this. Here's how this workshop will work. So go ahead and watch this workshop and take your notes. And at the end of the foundational information that I will share, I will go ahead and take you through the workbook, right? So if you have any questions as you watch, you can actually go ahead and drop it down below. Or I'm gonna go ahead and give you my a link to book a call with me if you want more clarity, or of course you will be able to have access to me via this platform as well, by sending a direct message. So with that said, let's go. All right. So what's included? General topics that you'd have in your mind. We're gonna be reviewing what a brand is. I'm not going to just teach you about building a personal brand without making sure that you have a firm understanding of what a brand is and all its elements, so that you can maneuver and make very informed decisions for your brand, right? So we're reviewing a brand, why build a personal brand, all of these things, right? So, of course, I'm going to take you right through. So, next thing. So, a little bit about me. I am Charmian-Marie Beadle, of course, and I have 9+ years in the communications industry, working in both corporate and small businesses. Wow, these typos, but it's cool. And also special projects in both entry level and senior positions. My last two jobs were senior positions. And then I said goodbye to 9 to 5 life. Then also I've had 7+ years in experience in business development, and then 6 years as an entrepreneur. In the midst of all of that, I have been able to specialize in digital marketing. I do a lot of writing, or did a lot of writing, freelance work actually, and so much more, website development and all of these things. So, in terms of communications and business development, you find that I have a unique passion and a unique arsenal, if you will, in terms of helping multiple individuals and businesses alike really make an impact in the digital space, especially. And so, of course, in becoming a coach, that passion has continued, and it has really felt good being able to help other businesses and brands to self actualize and to thrive, really. All right. So, before we begin, it's so important to define your terms. I'm sure when you were possibly in high school or so, your teacher would say, hey, make sure you define your terms before you really get into the nitty gritty so that the reader is on the same page. So, we're gonna do just that. All right. So, the first term, what is a brand, right? So, your brand is a communicative vehicle through which you build and nurture relationships with potential and current customers or clients, right? On the principles of communication, your brand has the power to make or break your business based on what is shared, right? So it is imperative that intended messages are communicated effectively and not simply transmitted and lost due to noise or distractions. Now, to break that down, the matter of communication, it ends up being tricky, especially when it comes to marketing, right? And brand development and all of that. Because the reality is that you, as a sender of the message, you will always have a specific intention. You will always have something specific that you want to share with your audience, that would invoke a specific emotion or that would encourage them to take a specific action. Now, if you do not strategically, move, and if you do not carefully carve that message and everything, then persons can end up getting the wrong message, or because of all the other competitors who are trying to say the similar thing, it can get lost in all the noise or the distractions. And I mean, on top of that, people have lives, other things are happening. So as a brand, it's important for you to recognize exactly what you want to share and package it in a strategic way so that the exact message that you want to share is transmitted and therefore or thereafter communicated effectively, so that the intended outcome is achieved, right? So, thereafter, now we're going to talk about your brand identity. So, your brand identity acts as the collection of elements or attributes that come together to distinguish one brand from another. So, the identity is a direct correlation with that of someone's personality, where personalities have unique attributes that help to set people apart. So, a reality is that I am different from you. And so because I am different, it means that I have unique things about me that help to identify or define me, right? And the same thing can be said about you. So think about your brand in that way. There are specific elements that come together, that we'll get into a little later, that help to define your brand versus another person's brand, right? Next, your brand position. So the brand's positioning refers to placement, and that's similar to the 5 P's of marketing, right? So where you place your brand matters, and it is important to maintain these placements and also be strategic about any expansions or affiliations that are to come. So our reality is that the idea of a position or placement, it seems very physical when we think about it, but we also have to think about the mental aspect of things. What words do we associate with specific brands that we think about? What types of words, and when we think of those words, we automatically have specific behaviors that go along with that, right? So I when you hear about brand position, I don't just want you to think about a store shelf or anything like that. I don't just want you to think about Instagram or Facebook or whatever. I also want you to think about vibe, mood, causes. How do people affiliate you? How do people associate you with specific moods or words or vibes? So think about that, because you are definitely going to be working on shaping your own brand perception, which we'll get into very soon. I hope you're following so far. Again, remember you can drop a comment below or write down your questions and reach out to me. Yeah, I am definitely open. I'm really excited to hear from you. All right. So next thing, what is a brand reputation? So a while ago I mentioned brand positioning. So let's get into reputation. A brand's reputation has to do with the public perception of the brand. In this instance, it is important to acknowledge that your brand's efforts may be one thing, but it's the public's perception that really solidifies that reputation of the brand and acts as an indicator of good positioning and marketing. So what you're seeing is that positioning works in tandem with reputation, right? So you can't have one without the other. And so even again, if you have the greatest of intentions to position yourself as this person who cares about the world and cares about eco-friendliness and all of these things, if persons don't really see that, based on your continued actions and words and all of these things that come together and form a part of your personal brand, or the brand that you are forming, then you won't be perceived as such, and then so therefore your positioning efforts won't necessarily be successful, right? So it's a really interesting thing, and it honestly takes time to build your brand's right positioning and, of course, your brand reputation, right? Next thing, what is brand marketing? Now, with brand marketing, it is important to recognize that having a brand does not automatically solve your problems or attract clients. Let's repeat that. With brand marketing, it is important to recognize that having a brand does not automatically solve your problems or attract clients. I think, and yeah, I have to break this one, but I think on the digital space, a lot of us tend to hear, "Oh, you need a brand to attract clients and all of these things," and we believe that it's the end all. We believe it's what will solve things, you know. And so that's why there are a lot of persons who hit out against, trying to develop a brand from the get go, because people get caught up with that and then just cart everything out the window, everything else out the window, and that cannot work. Imagine developing imagine a car, right? Imagine the body of the car, the really, let's think of a Benz, hey, right? No, let's think of a Jeep. Jeep. And imagine if you nicely style that Jeep. It's nice, matte black, all of these things, cute rims, the most and stuff, but then it doesn't have an engine. How is it gonna move? How is it gonna really show that it has like top class performance? Yeah, you have to have an engine in there. You have to have something that's gonna drive it forward and allow person to see it in action and all of these things. So it's exactly what we're talking about here, which is brand marketing. So having a brand forms the foundation of the messaging, designs, etc., that are going to guide all of your outbound strategies and tactics moving forward. So these strategies and tactics are incorporated in your overall marketing efforts. And these overall marketing efforts, you are marketing your brand. So the brand is the body of the car. So no, I mean, and I don't want you to think that it just has to do with looks, because remember, that's just your brand identity. Your brand overall is more wholesome. But just for the purpose of this analogy, so yeah, your brand is the car, the outside of it, yeah, it looks nice, really turns and all that. And then the marketing is the engine, right? Cool. Hope you're following along. Again, ask your questions if you need to. Then the final thing. So, what is your unique selling point? A unique selling point acts as the distinguishable factors that belong to a specific brand, allowing persons to make informed decisions about association or investment. And it's important to note that you're not just building your brand because you want people to invest in you. Great, that's happy, happy, joy, joy. But it's also like to help other businesses, to help other brands make decision as to whether or not they want to be associated with your brand. So think about endorsements and influencers and all of these things. If you as an influencer haven't properly positioned yourself, positioning again and reputation again, based on the positioning you have done and the reputation that you have and all of that, and in the marketing of yourself as a brand and all of these things, then different brands then start trying to evaluate whether or not they want to work with you or possibly be affiliated with you. So that is how that works. So what is it about your brand that will make you unique or make you stand out from all of the others who are in your industry, right? What's gonna make you land that endorsement deal? I mean, for just figure of speech for this example. So this is what simply sets you apart from others in your industry and can also be applied to offers, right? So offers, and it can be applied to products too. I should mention that here. So fine, if you happen to have a product like a remote for your television, right? We all know that there are different types of remotes, like universal remotes, all of these things, right? So what is it about your remote that makes it different from another brand's remote? Like said, Samsung versus Panasonic. I'm really on a roll today. Like what is it about the Samsung remote that makes it better than the Panasonic remote? You know, just saying, maybe you can think about it on spot, maybe you can say that the Samsung remote is definitely more reliable, or feels more top end, and so based on that unique selling point, you mentioned that so that people would be inspired to buy. I mean, of course, you have a lot more intelligent consumers, so it's not just about feeling top tier necessarily. I mean, some people would buy because of that, but it's just important for you to recognize the differentiating factors and sing on that, and be stand confidently in that, and so I mean that's a product, and then in terms of the service, it's pretty much the same thing. There are many coaches, for instance, that sell similar programs and stuff. So what is it that's gonna make you decide to invest with one coach versus another coach? And that's possibly because maybe you get more one-on-one calls, or maybe you get an extra workbook, ha, um, or something of the sort. So what is it that's gonna set your program apart from another coach's program? To think about that kind of thing. So, I want to kind of briefly examine some brands, and I want you to be thinking about them as well. Because, yeah, let's just visualize and stuff. So, I know Chick fil A is, of course, an international brand. Starbucks already, well, all three of them are actually international because Digital is from Ireland. But, right, so ideally, we should all be somewhat familiar with all three of these brands, right? So, Chick fil A, when we're thinking about Chick-fil-A, first and foremost, this logo can't hide. Like, their name, the logo, I mean, everybody's seen that, and that's a part of their brand identity. You can also see that their main colors are red and white, right? And it just so happens that that's the same for Digicel, just saying. Um, but yeah, with Chick-fil-A now, so moving beyond that, those two identity elements and stuff, um, when you think about Chick-fil-A, you think about it being a Christian organization that does good food, right? And they have strong values that they have made known, and so based on how they have positioned themselves and the reputation they have made for themselves, they have set themselves at a specific spot in their industry, and so persons overall just know that you go to Chick-fil-A for great food, and there are just certain things that they stand for and certain things that they don't, and for the fact that we know that, and internationally, and most people have never actually had a Chick-fil-A, that's good. That is good, right? So then moving to number two now, Starbucks, right? A multinational company. Um, Starbucks is coffee, but guess what? When you think about Starbucks, you think premium, right? When you think about Starbucks, you think about premium, and you think about quality coffee, and you think about a premium experience, right? And that's just the first word that comes to my mind. Like, no matter what, I don't know what's the first word that comes to your mind. Maybe you want to drop it in the comments or anything. But what I'm saying is that they have been skillful in terms of positioning themselves as a premium coffee brand. And so, I mean, there's Dunkin' Donuts. um which other coffee place that really has kind of made like a similar kind of name for themselves to Starbucks? I honestly cannot tell you. Maybe you want to drop that in comments too. But all I'm saying is that Starbucks has really done significantly well with positioning themselves and building their own reputation, and also interestingly making us know what they stand for, and and maintaining their standards actually, right? Then now we come to Digicel. Digicel is a telecommunications network and stuff. And Digicel has been able to weave themselves into the communities of whichever country they are in. Like, if it's one thing to say about corporate social responsibility and all of these things, yeah, yeah. And so that has positively added to their reputation, interestingly. So even if their services or their products are performing wonky or beautifully, don't want to say yay or nay, here and there. I can definitely say that one consistent thing is that they have been doing very well at engaging persons who are interacting with their brand and all of that, you know? So I've chosen these three brands. I mean, of course, there are many other brands I could have chosen, but I wanted to highlight them for specific things. The Chick-fil-A in terms of their positioning and their values and stuff. The Starbucks with, word association and all of that. Then Digital in terms of how they've woven themselves into the community and stuff. And all of these are very strong brands, right? So they've spent money on marketing their brand, and they've spent money on positioning their brands, spent money on shaping their reputation and all of that, right? So some important supporting principles to note before we move forward. A target audience versus niche, right? Now, part of the reason all three of those brands do so exceptionally well at just positioning themselves is because they understand their target audience, and they have selected their niche. They have decided on who they want to really reach out to and appeal to, and attract, right? So, with that said, your target audience is a segment or sect of a bigger group that has a unique factor in common, making them prime candidates to receive specific products or services, right? So, think of a group of 2 million people, right? It can be a bit daunting, especially if you are a small business, to reach 2 million people with one service. Right? So, with that said, you're going to try and narrow down to see the specific individuals who best stand to benefit from this service, right? And so, in narrowing down, you possibly reach down to like 500,000 people. But still, you have a small business, maybe have it's you alone or maybe a team of three or something like that. That's still a lot of people. So, with that said, you develop a niche, right? So the niche is from your target audience, and you establish a niche, which is a more specific group of individuals whose binding factor is something a lot more unique and definitive. Now, I love to use this example. So say that 2 million people that I mentioned before is 2 million mothers, right? So I said, hey, let's the target audience be mothers with two children, right? Guess what? As much as that narrows down to the 500,000, that's still a lot of people because there are lots of mothers at varying ages who have two children at varying ages, right? So suppose it's a thing where my products are maybe toddler products or something like that, then I'm not going to be targeting mothers, with two children who are not toddlers. Like that wouldn't make sense. So my niche would be, mothers who have two children who are toddlers. And that narrows it down nicely to a nice beautiful niche and stuff. And if you even want to get even more specific, some people call this a micro niche or a sub niche. It could be two toddlers who are girls, something like that. So yeah, niching definitely allows you to be more specific and targeted in terms of just who you are speaking to, which is important so that you can work on your brand positioning and really shaping your brand's reputation and all of that. All right, guys. So so now we're setting the stage, right? So the first three steps is what I take my clients through whenever I am mapping their brands with them, right? So that's their brand core, the brand identity, and the brand position and journey, right? In terms of building out a personal brand, however, I added on these two steps, to help to give a nice rounded perspective. So the active step of brand personalization, and then the active step of brand developing personal brand support, right? Which has to do with well, I'll read it here. So the first one, your brand core. This incorporates foundational elements of your brand that will eventually inform the way that your brand is built out. Your brand identity, is informed by the brand core. So it is the identity is the most outward part of the brand, which showcases creativity and a unique selling point. The third thing, brand position and journey. Once your brand is generally developed, it's important to think through the strategies that will help to drive your brand forward, right? I mean, I spoke a little bit about that earlier. Then number four, brand personalization. So we take the elements of the generally mapped brand, so that's steps 1 to 3, and then we enhance it using our unique selling points or unique factors of our personality, expertise, etc. Right? And the final thing, which is I would say the bedrock of supporting our personal brands, that's message mapping and content development that flatters the brand personalization efforts, right? So I'm going to go into the brand mapping process. Take your notes, but you'll also find that in the workbook, I've really broken it down for you also, so that you don't so that you can see it in a more broken down way and you're not necessarily feeling overwhelmed and thing. All right, good. So to develop your brand core, you need to solidify your brand story, which I mean really dictates, how you got to where you are now. Telling that story of your journey, and helping people to relate to your brand some more. Why should they, journey with you? Why should there be a connection? Why should they be loyal? How can they relate to you? Are you just like them? Did you start from $0 and now you're at six figures? Did you start from having a 9 to 5 where you couldn't stand your boss and all of that, to being your own boss and living your life? Like, what has the journey been like? Think about your story and don't be afraid to tell it. Own your story and share it, because that adds to your unique selling point, right? Next thing, brand values. So remember, I was mentioning with Chick-fil-A, they have solid brand values, and we all know that. So with that said, yeah, you need to decide on what you're gonna stand for as a brand. Are you gonna say integrity, kindness, empowerment, things like that. Because at the end of the day, it should be that these values are the undergirding of how you interact with people, and how persons should expect, or what person should expect in those interactions for real, right? Establish your brand promise. So some people would sometimes mix this up with a slogan, but it's a little deeper than that. Your brand promise or your core message is actually what you promise, no matter what. So no matter which offer you provide, how many products you provide, all of that, there's a core thing that will be delivered. So whether it's top notch customer service, or whether it's something that will definitely enhance the lives of those who are interacting with your brand, then let that be your core promise. Let that be your core message, sorry, or your brand promise. For instance, with Digicel, for a number of years, their core promise was, with Digicel, your credit lasts longer. So no matter which phone they offered, which data plans they offered, all of that, we always were able to think of the fact that they said or promised that with digital their credit would last longer. You get me? Then of course target audience. We spoke about that earlier. So won't go into that again because we do have quite a bit more to go through. Alrighty. So major elements included in the development of your brand identity. So remember earlier I said I would get into this. So decide on your vibe and tone, right? Do you want interactions with your brand to be nested in like a more friendly tone or more corporate and stoic? You have to really think about that. And I will say for personal brands, you want it to feel casual. You want it to feel natural and stuff. You don't want it to feel like we're talking to a robot. I mean, especially for the fact that there's so many mechanisms right now in digital that can allow persons to just get automatic messages and all of that. You want that type of interactivity and all of that, right? So think about that for real, right? But in terms of the external elements, apart from vibe and tone, that showcase creativity. So your brand colors, your brand fonts, your logo, base communicative material like social media pages, websites, business card, all these things. General templates, right? And digital templates, right? So everything that goes out on behalf of your brand, I really want you to recognize that that is associated with your brand and communicates on behalf of your brand. So I want to tell you, if something is not looking right with one of your designs, it's going to communicate on behalf of your brand. So we really need to make sure that we are taking our time in terms of creating these things um, and publishing these things and all of these things, because again, everything that we put out is a means of communication, right? Next thing, to stabilize your journey, you must pay attention to, oh, and of course, this is in relation to the brand journey and positioning. Your communication channels. So earlier I said, when we think of positioning, don't just think about Facebook and Instagram and stuff, but think about association and all of that. But here, communication channels. Choose the communication channels that make the most sense for your brand and also are most likely to be used by your target audience and especially your niche, right? Then now you're thinking about your brand reputation, positioning, and affiliations. Who are you associating your brand with? And so think carefully about your collaborations. If you're pitching yourself for a podcast, if you trying to do an interview with somebody else, some other brand or something of the sort, make sure you're selecting those or building those partnerships strategically, so that if somebody looks at that other brand and stuff and then they happen to see that, hey, you're doing some work with them, that they have a good outlook or a good we call it no conclusion that they will draw. Everybody knows the phrase, ideally birds of a feather flock together. It literally goes along with that in terms of your brand reputation and positioning and affiliation. So think about that. And also, a lot of persons tend not to remember about this. So I always make sure to remind persons it's important to take note of your seasonal and cultural adaptation, right? Or to adapt to seasons and cultures, right? So, cultures meaning if you're running an international business, if you want international clients and stuff, you need to understand how they speak. You need to understand how they think. If even in terms of their economy, for instance, if there's a US company that wants to work with a company in Jamaica or businesses here in Jamaica and stuff, they have to understand our economic climate and also our money mindset that we're predisposed to pretty much, and all these things, so that they can know how best to pitch to us, so that they can know how best to position themselves, so that they can know how best to interweave themselves into the society, right? So it's the same thing that you need to think about if you want to work with international clients, or even if you want to work locally only. It's still important for you to know the external factors that influence the persons you are trying to reach. All right. So, do you actually need to develop a personal brand? I want you to think about that for a moment. Do you actually need to develop a personal brand? All right. So, why a personal brand? I'm going to take you through the three types of brands, and I still really want you to think about that because there are a lot of persons who believe that they need a personal brand when they technically do not, um, and especially based on the type of personality they have. And they don't recognize also how much it will take to build a personal brand, right? But if you decide to build a personal brand, just commit to it, go hard, yeah, just go hard in it, right? So the first type of brand is a business brand. So more the business brand is more service oriented, and so service based businesses tend to develop this type of brand and build their reputation surrounding customer service. So of course, So they, I would say most small businesses, like with teams of like 3 to about 15 thereabouts. And I mean, of course, corporate brands as well, but I'm just focusing on small businesses, of course, for the benefit of this platform and stuff. But yeah, so teams of about 3 to 15 and thing. So like lawyer offices, accounting firms, those kinds of things. They want people to know that they give good customer service. So they build that kind of business friendly brand, kind of, your partner in business, things like that. To make sure that people know that they can get some good service and good quality results from them, right? Um, but then no, you have a lifestyle brand, right? Popularly used by corporate entities and other businesses that have high influence in the way people live their lives. So they develop lifestyle brands to inspire particular actions, thoughts, or behaviors. Many of these entities are seen to take part in numerous sorry about that, numerous community initiatives. So even think about Digicel, as I was mentioning earlier, they are they developed a lifestyle brand, so um honestly, you feel that their services and their presence enhances your life in one way or another, right? We also have this other company out here in Jamaica, well, in the Caribbean, Sagicor. They've done exceptionally well in building a lifestyle brand, and they really help to influence persons to lead better and healthier lives, and they put their money where their mouth is, literally. They plan various events and all of these things. And of course, there are many entities, overseas who do similar things as well. You see them in the ads and all of these things. And even in terms of the types of words that they choose, there's Allstate that comes to mind. Allstate, are you good in good hands? You know, even that question really helps to make you think, and really helps to make you think that they care about, if you really are in good hands. And it implies that they have your back, and it implies that they want you to be thinking about, securing yourself and securing your life and all of that, so the difference between the business brand versus the lifestyle brand, it's not that the lifestyle brand doesn't want to tell you that they give good customer service. It's actually more implied. They actually go a step further and tell you that they are your partner for life versus your partner for your business. If you get what I'm saying, let me know if you get that differentiation and stuff. Then no, we go into the personal brand, right? And many times over, people do confuse a lifestyle brand with a personal brand, right? But the personal brand is building brand authority, visibility, and community. And of course, that's best achieved when it's a solo business, right? Or a solo entrepreneur who's doing that, right? So that's also why influencers build personal brands, right? So building that brand authority helps with the credibility. So the more credibility you have, the more likely that people are going to definitely potentially purchase from you or want to work with you and things like that, or listen to you when you say something so that you can influence. Ah, right. Then of course, visibility. You have to make sure you're putting yourself out there. So you're choosing your communication channels wisely. You're choosing your affiliations and your overall positioning wisely. Right. And then of course, the focus on community. You want to make sure people feel like they're a part of your movement, and that you value them and all of these things. So funny enough, I believe that the personal brand is a beautiful hybrid mix of all three of these. Because remember, lifestyle brands, have high influence and all of these things. So when a personal brand ends up, building to the point where, yeah, they're really at the peak of their popularity, they end up being very influential with how people lead their lives. And then even in terms of having the business brand tendencies as well, you want to make sure people feel that they will be taken care of through customer service and things like that, right? So yeah, the personal brand ends up being that hybrid version and stuff, right? So again, do you need a personal brand? If you do, Just make sure you know it's a lot of work, but it really, really pays off. All right. So, personalizing your brand on the basis of your uniqueness. So, it must be noted that building your personal brand is not a finite action. So, as you evolve, your personal brand evolves, right? So, as such, it is important for you to acknowledge that the idea is to carry individuals on that journey of evolution with you, right? So, plain and simple, just as we are dynamic individuals, as I love to call it, yeah, your brand has to be dynamic, and dynamism isn't just about the flashy lights and all of that, but it's also just the dynamic ebbs and flows of life, and being able to communicate in the midst of all of that, right? No. So choosing your messaging and developing content as a personal brand requires you to really hone in or zero in on this list of things here. I'm not gonna list them out right now because I'm actually going to hop over to the worksheet very soon. And these are incorporated there and stuff. But I mean, this is exactly what you need to think about in building out your message maps and then developing content that really suits your personal brand versus you just trying to copy another person's personal brand. Not saying that you're trying to copy anybody deliberately. Many brands inspire others, but it's important for you to do the deep diving and do the research and do the work to figure out what will fit your personal brand. You get me? So, with that said, now it's time to get practical. So the workbooks are available, and here we go.